People's Democratic Party, PDP. It's a special occasion where the party's 2023 presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar wants to react to the recent Supreme Court judgment in a case he filed challenging President Tinubu's electoral victory. Senior members of the party, including the acting national chairman, the chairman of the board of trustees, and some former governors, are in attendance.
We may be disappointed, but one thing I want to reiterate here is that we are not deterred.
The PDP's presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar then takes to the podium for his address. He outlines what he believes could be the implications of the judgment on future elections in Nigeria.
The judgments of the PEPC and the Supreme Court have far-reaching grave implications, including the following. One is the erosion of trust in the electoral system and our democracy. When people lose trust and confidence in elections, democracy is practically on life support. The other grave implication is that contestants in Nigeria's election should do whatever is necessary to be declared winner. That includes identity theft, impersonation, forging of educational and other documents, perjury, and violence. The third is that if you are robbed of victory, do not bother going to cause for redress, because your glaring evidence of the robbery will be ignored in favor of the mandate bandit.
However, the former vice president is not silent on his next line of action.
As for me and my party, this phase of work is done. However, I'm not going to go away. If you think I'm going to go away, forget about it. For as long as I breathe, I will continue to struggle with other Nigerians to deepen our democracy and rule of law.
He also suggests some reforms to Nigeria's electoral laws and more.
We can urgently make constitutional amendments, and I'm happy members of the National Assembly are here, that will prevent any court or tribunal from hiding behind technicalities and legal sophistry to affirm electoral haste and undermine the will of the people. We must make electronic voting and collation of results mandatory. We must provide that all litigation arising from a disputed elections must be concluded before inauguration of a winner.
Other recommendations are mandatory electronic voting and collation of results, conclude all electoral litigations before inaugurating a winner, as well as require a presidential candidate to secure 50% plus one of all valid votes cast or conduct a runoff for the two leading candidates. The Supreme Court's verdict on October the 26, 2023 has sparked numerous responses from both the ruling party and the opposition parties. For the PDP presidential candidate, this judgment marks a chapter in his political career, but by no means signifies its conclusion.
Welcome back. Yes, Honorable Aneka Nomana joins us now. He was a member of the, that's the 8th Assembly, isn't it?
9th.
Okay, the 9th Assembly is of the People's Democratic Party. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
The speech by Atiku Abubakar, we know that before that time he had said, well, he believes has implicit confidence in the judiciary, believes that they'll do the right things. Then now he's clearly not happy with the way the things have turned, which just clearly shows us, well, if politicians, if judgment don't go in their way, chances are that you get to hear that they're not happy with the way those kind of things are. So that in itself, doesn't that send, even though yes, we'll come to his recommendations, but those perspectives right there about not being happy with the way the judgment went, saying that it comes across as though he's saying we'll have, what, the Supreme Court is saying, well, if it's okay to break the laws and do certain things, then Nigeria is doomed. Those kind of perspectives, look, I don't know if every member of your party are on the same page with him on this kind of matter, because it sends a different message entirely in terms of democracy, when the courts rule, and what we should do moving forward. What, for instance, is your perspective on this matter?
First, thank you very much for bringing me on, and good morning to Nigerians. I want to say first that I think the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the last election, Atiku Abubakar, every right to ventilate his views and positions, roundly provided in sections 33 through 45 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, particularly at section 39, where freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and what he feels. He went to court. He doesn't feel satisfied, but he has a right to say how he feels. But that being the case, the Supreme Court has ruled. The final arbiter in the matter, there's really nothing anyone can do at this point.
So was that statement necessary then?
Like I said, he has a right to make his statements, and he has every freedom to express the way he feels, because he had an expectation. The expectation perhaps didn't come through. So he's expressing how he feels. So he's completely right in expressing how he feels. Yeah. And as a contestant.
Well, he went on to make some recommendations. I know my colleagues will focus on some of the other matters, but those recommendations of his, because, I mean, you haven't also played, still playing in politics. Are you planning to contest in the future or sometime?
Yeah, time will tell.
Okay.
Time will tell.
That's a safe way out.
Yeah.
Jimmy, just before you move to the recommendations, what I wanted to know, I think that was the thrust of your question, was whether that sentiment, the sentiment which he expressed, did it express fully, did it capture fully sentiment of majority of members of your political party?
Obviously so, because he had an expectation. And of course, the expectation didn't come through. Like you're going for a football match and you're expecting that you will win, and then of course it didn't come your way. It's not, you won't clap for yourself and start running a party.
We all see that.
Yeah, so
the spirit of sportsmanship. Everybody, you shake yourself. They're not happy with the ref.
Yeah,
but they shake
it's not good. But it has happened. It has happened. The Supreme Court has ruled, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. It also doesn't take away how he feels or how the political party feels.
What I'm asking about is the choice of expression. I'm going to read some of what he said. The bigger loss is not mine, but for Nigeria. If the Supreme Court implies that crime is good and should be rewarded, then Nigeria has lost and the country is doomed, irrespective of who occupies the office. Does that capture the sentiment of majority of members of your party?
Again, as a political party, you expect a win, whether on the ballot on the first day or in the litigation that follows. So this didn't happen. So I do not expect in politics that you will start clapping and celebrating a loss. No political party does that. No politician does that. So there was an expectation. The expectation didn't come through. And we've gotten to the final point of this. So what do we do? Move forward.
The thing is, you believe you didn't lose fairly.
Obviously, everybody in the country felt differently after the election. But of course, it also does not take away the facts of the litigations and how it's being looked at. But we've gone through all of this to the end. Where are we now? We have to move forward because we can reverse the gear at this point because the Supreme Court has ruled. There's really nothing anyone can practically do at this point than to ventilate the feelings and make recommendations like he did.
But you know, if I could just follow up on that, part of that statement also says, we show, quoting that statement now, part of it, we showed irrefutable evidence of gross irregularities, violence, and manipulations during the elections. We showed incontrovertible evidence that INEC violated the Electoral Act and deliberately sabotaged its own publicly announced processes and procedure in order to illegally declare Tinubu elected. The position of the Supreme Court, even though final, leaves so much unanswered. But what we heard the justices say, what several lawyers who have put across, is that this right here appears to be passing the buck. They've talked about the processes, how the lawyers need to prepare their case, argue their case. If they felt the party didn't do it right, or the candidates and their lawyers didn't do it right, and then you then say, well, the Supreme Court, clearly something is wrong here, because the adjoining paragraph here talks about Justice Datijo saying something is not right with the Supreme Court.
Yes, well, at this point, where we are, we can't exactly say what is right or wrong with the Supreme Court. It is better it's coming from the justices of the Supreme Court, because they work there, they understand the issues. But looking at the electoral issue, of course, we have a barrage of electoral problems and issues surrounding all elections in this country. Yes, I have been witness, I've been a participant, observer, so we have experienced some of these things. There are several things that INEC said they would do that they never did. There are several issues.
We also know that.
Yes.
But part of what I'm asking is, look, we have heard judges how they said it. If they say we were going to do something, and then it wasn't part of the law, and the judges said, look, it's not part of the law. So they could promise you something, but insofar as it isn't enshrined in the law and they broke it, it's not tantamount to breaking the law, is it?
See, the interpretations we have as laymen, that they call us, completely different from what they do in the court. We could move in from the field.
I thought that was clear enough.
Yeah, you will move in from the field, and then they go and tell you something else from the standpoint of the law, like they say. So what do? They have ruled. And we have gotten to the very final point. It does not take away the irregularities. It does not take away what is wrong. What is wrong is wrong.
Did the party prove that in the court? That's the issue. Because many thought, look, they have fantastic lawyers all over there, all over the places. So, but if they missed out some key things and everybody saw this gaping hole.
So in all that you've presented, and they said, and then the court says, look, this is what we accept because this is what is good for them. This is what they believe the law says. So what do? That is where we are in Nigeria. So once they've made the pronouncement, the trial court did its part, and then the dissatisfied parties moved to a higher court, and of course the higher court now puts a sledgehammer. So at this point, what do? Is to begin to re-engineer for what happens next. Because no matter what we do at this point, there's nothing that can happen than re-engineering towards what happens next. That is where the party needs to begin its internal re-engineering and working towards what happens next. Because there is no effort. Now, I'm being very frank. There's no effort now that can reverse what has taken place.
Yeah, because look at this, what he says, judges are no longer appointed based on merits, but are products of the interplay of politics and nepotism. It goes on. So,
is it just judges?
No, but the question is it just happening now? Didn't it happen when he was vice president?
Is it just judges? These are part of the internal problems of Nigeria that we must do.
Politicians know all of these things.
Exactly.
They've been there. They see these things. In fact, some of them were the ones that made these things start happening that way. But when things don't go their way, they then want to push the public so the public can go out there and do certain things. Your party, every party, they have an opportunity to do the right things, but we never see them do these things until they're out of certain positions. Then people start saying one or two things.
That brings to the point they need to do the right thing. You talked about the right thing. So the right thing must be done irrespective of who is the occupant of the office. You raise the issue of nepotism. There's no reason.
No, I was reading his.
Okay. Well, it doesn't take away the fact that there's nepotism. So those issues are things we must correct as a nation moving forward. We must begin to appoint people who are deserving of a position into those positions. We must begin to look at placing people in the right, going through the right processes. That's why we keep talking about strong institutions and not individuals. If the institution is strong and is right, these things will flow seamlessly. It's not about the individual, but in Nigeria, unfortunately, and in my opinion, it's been more about individuals rather than institutions. And that's why we're having this recurring issues back and forth.
Well, he did say that he was going to be pursuing a number of constitutional reforms, and he's speaking to members of the National Assembly in the PDP right there. He made some recommendations going as far back as the 1995 Constitutional Conference and talking about how rotational presidency amongst the 6 geopolitical zones was something I was muted back then. The fact that the FCT should have a mayor. And then he now starts to talk about the electoral reforms which he expects, that courts shouldn't be able to hide behind technicalities but will need to rule on substance. Some people will say, isn't that heavily dependent on what is presented before the court?
No, clearly so. But of course, the issue of technicalities we have all experienced in the various judgments and so on or so forth. Of course, they can come under any guise to give their judgment. We can say, but we're not right in there. But of course, some of those recommendations are very germane and important. The issue of rotational presidency, yes. The issue of, he also raised the issue of a single term of 6 years going through zones. Yes, I think that forms part of what was the late former Vice President Alex Ekweme's initial recommendation of 6 geopolitical zone vice presidents. And so it's just an amplification of that position, which is, well, for me, I don't know how it works, but it will take a constitutional hurdle to get through.
We've also seen another, sorry to interrupt you, a sitting president, President Goodluck Jonathan, made this recommendation while he was sitting.
He did.
That a president should only have a single term. Are we glossing over something? Because for this to keep coming up over and over again,
I don't think
there must be something to it.
Well, for me, I don't know how a single term of 6 years, 4 years, and all of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the PDP, has a right to his views, like I said earlier. But in my opinion, I think that 2 terms would just be appropriate. 2 terms would be appropriate. I think so. He may have his reasons and strong reasons why he's recommending that, and so on. Of course, maybe when he explains further, we will come to the understanding as to why he is recommending that. But he has a right to that recommendation. He also went on to make certain recommendations, like strengthening the electoral laws to enable the electronic processes that will safeguard the electoral process, which I completely agree to.
Electronic
voting, electronic collation, and all of those. Those things are very germane in cleaning up the electoral processes, because all of these issues we are talking about, of course, will not arise if we had those. We have made a success of the banking industry, the success of the telecoms industry. Why is it difficult in the electoral process? So there's actually no hard and fast rule about making these things happen. So if we want to be transparent and we want to be clean with the process, electronic processes will make it cleaner to achieve results. Just like you do, you send your emails, you have a trail. You transfer money, you have a trail. So if you vote electronically or also collect electronically, you have a trail. So all of these issues of whether they collected this or didn't collect that, or having too much of human influence or human impact in the process would have been taken away. So I completely agree with Alhaji Atiku Abubakar in that recommendation, and I think it's something that the National Assembly would need to look at in proposing amendments to the electoral law, as it were.
Well, there's one more important recommendation, but I know that my colleague Ayo has questions for you. Ayo.
Thank you, Maokwe. I just want to ask you, sir, so when you were talking about, weak institutions and all of that, and you kept saying that in Nigeria some things are done differently, how do you personally think that we can strengthen institutions in the country?
I think I'm not getting the second part of your question.
How do you?
I had you up to how.
Yes, I'm asking, how do you think we can strengthen institutions in the country?
Strengthening institutions, it's by following the rule of law. The rule of law is number one. When it's not about the person, but about the institution. when it's about the process and not about the person. So, but we are doing too much of the person, the occupant of a seat, rather than what the institution ought to be doing. That is what we are saying.
Okay.
If we follow the rule of law,
okay, so
everything will work the way it ought to work.
Now, is there a role for the ordinary citizen in the country in strengthening the rule of law, in strengthening our institutions?
Yes, the ordinary citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria have the citizens have a responsibility of ensuring that they continue to provide the needed input, the needed checks, the needed observations, the needed criticisms in ensuring that things work the way they ought to work. And they must raise questions where questions need to be raised. Must ask that things be done correctly. They should sue where they need to sue and do the things that they need to do. It's a collective bargain.
Yeah.
So we must, as a people, rise up to the occasion as to issues as it concerns us. But the moment we fold our hands all and stay behind and think that nothing has happened, of course, you know human tendency. They want to do what they think will make them feel
do you see a situation where the comments of ordinary citizens can actually weaken the institutions, that the things that we ordinary citizens say? Do you see a situation where such things can weaken or denigrate the dignity or integrity of our institutions in a country?
No, it depends on the import of the comment. But clearly, the views of citizens, I think, should help strengthen institutions. Because it's a collective bargain, like I said earlier.
I agree that they can help to strengthen. Just a second. I agree that they can help to strengthen. Can those comments also weaken the institutions?
I want to look at it from this in this angle. Yeah, I do not think so. As long as you follow the law, the rule of law, I believe that the comments of citizens, particularly informed comments, should help strengthen the institutions of governance.
Okay, so in what way
there are also
then?
Comments that could denigrate, but more than anything else, the views of the people would always help strengthen the institution.
So you don't think that, the comments of, okay, let me ask you this way. The comments of your candidate, the presidential candidate of your party, in what way do you think it strengthens or denigrates the judiciary, the highest judicial body in the land?
Like I did say earlier, Sections 33 to 45, fundamental human rights as enshrined in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended, accords every citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria the right of expression, the freedom of expression, and particularly as Section 39. So the presidential candidate of the PDP has every right to ventilate his views, to ventilate his opinion as a Nigerian.
Okay.
So
I agree with you on that, but yes.
Or does not, whether it denigrates or not, and so on, still doesn't take away what has taken place.
Okay.
So
now, there are some...
He has a right to ventilate his views.
Completely. But you also know that there are some people in Nigeria who call, not just, even though they are ordinary citizens, but they are not just ordinary citizens. They are promoted by way of their, contributions to national development over the years, statesmen. And so certain comments are expected of them and certain comments are not expected of them. Now, when 12 judges, according to one of our guests on this show, 12 judges looked at the cases brought by your candidate. 12. Part of them in the PEPC and the other part from the Supreme Court. And then your candidate comes up with these positions denigrating, as some people believe, the integrity of the Supreme Court of the land. And you think that's okay?
I did say, and I maintain, that he has a right to expression. He has a right to his expression. But that doesn't take away the ruling and the judgment that has been given.
Okay, now going forward now, because there are a number of people who have often said that your party many times, just because the elections do not go in the way of the opposition party, the functions of playing an opposition role isn't active. What kind of role will your party be playing this time around that you are not at the seat of power at the center?
Every opposition party is there to provide the necessary checks on the government in power. Don't forget, the PDP today is in opposition. There was a time there was when the PDP was in the center. And what has come together to form the party that is the government in power today, in their different fragments, were also in opposition. So the opposition party's role is to continue to provide the necessary checks, the necessary observation, criticism, and other views that will help strengthen and make governance better for the populace. And I think the party would continue in that role, raising issues that should be raised, making suggestions that should be made, and of course in putting the necessary heat that will make the government work for the people. That's what is expected.
So just as we wind down, we're not saying he doesn't have a right to his views. Yes, of course he has a right to his views. But we should also not forget, the PDP has itself to blame in this kind of case, because we have heard several people say, number one is that if they had found a solution with PTOB, they might not have been here. If they had found a solution with the group of 5 governors, they might not have been here. If they found a solution with Kwango, so these people have all been together. They know themselves very well. Look at the opposition votes, much more than the votes of the ruling party. So if they had pulled together, this would not have been here, but that didn't happen. And now look at where we are. So, do you think your party has learned the right lessons?
I hope so. In every election, and once you get through an election season, of course, you have to review and check the lessons learned. But clearly so, the last election was a completely different election in Nigeria, and we must take note of this. The first time 3 political parties came and had 12 states each.
Because you have several people thought, these other persons have been contested.
The APC had 12 states, the PDP had 12 states, Labour Party 12 states. For the first time, all 36 states divided, including the FCT, 12.
Yeah,
so you could see clearly that it was a different thing. But I completely agree with you that political gymnastics will have to be looked at very carefully in moving forward for any political party, because you have to see how you align the games to see how you win. But clearly so, you can see that if the right alignments were done either way,
because people wanted a change. If they thought the new breed, at least someone new, which people thought, if they are not aligned behind him, since it's not about him and it's about Nigeria, if you thought about Nigeria at that time, who knows? Who knows who would have been president now? But
mistakes.
The rest is history.
Politics, you make mistakes as you move on, and you correct yourself as you move on. But it's not as straight as we are saying it here, because of so many interests that come to play in the entire political game.
Different interests, it's not just about. You shouldn't be telling us it's only about Nigeria. Interest play, personal interest.
In politics, interest play at any level. Interest will come to play very seriously.
All right, we do thank you for coming, Honorable Adekanumana, member of the 9th House of Assembly and a member of the PDP.